Hey everyone, welcome to Substack Coach. So today I have an interview with Heidi Turner of Happy Freelancing, and she agreed to sit down with me and talk about LinkedIn. Many of you have asked me about using LinkedIn to share your Substack posts or to grow your subscriber list and best practices around that. And I don't have a lot of experience with LinkedIn. I'm still learning the platform myself. I'm relatively new there. And so I reached out to Heidi because I've done some of her workshops on using LinkedIn and found her content to be extremely helpful. And so she agreed to sit down with me and talk about, in more detail, about good practices around using LinkedIn, and how to reach your audience on LinkedIn, all of those things. So I hope you enjoyed the interview. Hi Heidi, thank you so much for joining me again here. This time not as a cool person on Substack, though you're still cool, but I wanted you to come back as an expert interview because I really needed to talk to someone about LinkedIn. I do have clients and people on my Substack community that ask me occasionally about using their LinkedIn followers or their LinkedIn profile as a way to get people over to Substack. But I am still in the learning stages of LinkedIn. I did Substack first, and now I'm learning LinkedIn from you to kind of grow my presence as Substack coach on LinkedIn as well. So I decided to reach out to you because I was like, maybe you can answer some of the questions that have come up and also kind of share with us best practices around using LinkedIn to grow our subscribers so that we're, being inviting and not being like too pushy or salesy. And I've really enjoyed your approach to LinkedIn over the last 6 months to a year, maybe, that I've occasionally joined into your workshops because you're not really pushy and I'm not a pushy person. And you've really been great with giving tips and templates and what to do for growing your business without feeling like you have to be super salesy. So big spiel on my part, but I really want you to be able to take away this interview and kind of just share with us your experience on LinkedIn and best practices for LinkedIn, and maybe even some practical tips on how we can get people over to Substack. So thank you for joining me, and please take it away.
It is my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I love using LinkedIn. It is the social media platform that I use almost exclusively. And I found that it has grown my newsletter following, I would say probably by almost a third. I would say probably maybe almost a third of my subscribers right now come from LinkedIn. And then the rest come from Substack or from recommendations. So the first thing that I will say about LinkedIn, and I would say this of any social media, the mistake I see a lot of people making is they just grab a social media platform without asking if that's where their audience is. And you're going to run into a lot of trouble if you just go on LinkedIn because it's what I'm talking about, because it's easy for me, but your audience isn't on there. It's not worth it to be on there. So the first thing you really want to do is look at who your audience is and whether LinkedIn is where they're going to be. If your audience, like mine, is freelance writers, freelance editors, you can find them on almost any platform. There are a million groups for them everywhere. I go with LinkedIn because most of my content is actually geared to business writers and editors. So these are people whose clients are business people and professional people. They're all on LinkedIn. So that's why I'm also on LinkedIn. It's also easier for me because in my business life, LinkedIn is where my clients are too. So I can combine the two profiles into one, and I can reach both audiences at the same time. But if your audience is, say, interior designers or something that's more visually based, your audience might actually be on Instagram, they might be on TikTok, they might be somewhere else. So really and truly, the first thing you want to know is my audience on this platform? And to figure it out, what I suggest you do is just create a basic profile. Go onto LinkedIn if you don't have one already. Create a basic profile, the minimum you need, and just do some searching. So search for your keywords, search for your audience, and see, are there a lot of people who describe themselves as that on the platform, and are they kind of active? Have they been posting in the last 6 months on a regular basis? Do they only post once a month or maybe once every 6 months? In that case, they're not really active. Are there groups that you can join for your audience or to get to know your audience better? And are those groups currently active? If they are, if you've got quite a few people on there who fit in your audience and groups geared to your audience that you can join, then it's probably a good platform for you to be on. If you're not finding those things, then I recommend trying some other platforms. So that's really step one. And if you're already on LinkedIn and you're finding you're not getting a lot of traction, you've been posting consistently for a year or two and it's just not happening, it might be that you're on the wrong platform for your audience. So that's the first place to start to try and build up your success and to reach the people that you want to reach. And I think people tend to go on LinkedIn because they're professional, but a lot of times they go on there because there's actually a low barrier to entry. It's not like Instagram where you have to be visually inclined, where you want to be a professional in Canva, which I am not. It's not like TikTok where you need to be creating constant videos. Text only is fine on LinkedIn, and it's what I use the most. But that also draws people to it when maybe their audience wouldn't be there. So that's what I encourage you to look at first. Who is your Substack for? And where are they going to be? And if they tend to be on LinkedIn, then it's a great platform for you to be on. So that's how I start off with it. And then when you're looking at posting, there's obviously, it depends on what your goals are. But if what you're looking for is growth, what I recommend is that you don't necessarily start off just talking all the time about your Substack, about what you're posting about, and about who you're helping. I recommend mostly posting helpful posts. Those are things that answer questions that your audience are thinking of, but maybe don't always have a call to action to go to visit your newsletter. And then as you release posts, I always release a post on LinkedIn that's linked to my most recent newsletter post with a little bit of a short description about what's in the post or maybe a preview of it, and then a link to it. And linking on LinkedIn is one of those things that everybody has an opinion on, but nobody seems to be really sure about. So the argument with a lot of people is they think that if you post an external link on your LinkedIn post, the algorithm automatically restricts it because LinkedIn doesn't want you going off the platform to get your information. I can't say for certain that I found that. I've tried it both ways. I've tried it where in the original post, I've included a link to the newsletter, and I've done it, and I'm sure you've seen it, where you say, here's my newsletter, link in comments. Mm-hmm. I've done it both ways, and I haven't really noticed too much of a difference in the reach. But what I've done to get around it, and I will share this with you right now if I can, let's see here, is you can on LinkedIn, you can see my LinkedIn right now. What you can do now is you can add external links to your profile. So you see at the top of my posts, it says view my newsletter. Yeah. That goes at the top of every one of my posts. Oh, nice. And if you click on that, it goes directly to my newsletter homepage. Now, some people say go to your newsletter homepage. Others people say link to your about page. It's up to you, whichever one you want to do. But then when I post on LinkedIn, I don't have to post an external link. That's at the top of every one of my posts. So all I have to do is say, click on the link at the top of this post, and that will take you to my newsletter. So that's one way of getting around the, can I post an external link? Should I not post an external link? What about the algorithm? And honestly, it depends on who you ask. LinkedIn has said they don't automatically restrict posts with external links. Other people say they do. I don't know what the truth is, but I do think that just having the external link in your profile helps you. Then you don't have to answer that question at all. You can just say, visit my newsletter, link at the top of my profile. And it also appears right here at the top of your profile. You can see view my newsletter right here. So anyone who views my profile will see that, and they can click on that as well and be taken to my newsletter.
You can do that with any link that you want at the top, or it just has a couple spots?
I believe it's a custom So you can create a custom button. So you could, for
Okay.
example, say, go to my website or see my portfolio. In this case, I've chosen view my newsletter, just because that's what I'm trying to build up an
Yeah.
audience around right now. But it can be customized and you can have it go to whatever link you want it to.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
And it's a fantastic workaround. I think it's available on free LinkedIn profiles. I have a premium profile because I do a lot of search for clients as well on there.
Mhm.
But I think you can actually have that even in a free profile. So it's a very easy way to get interest in your newsletter. And then that's also appearing at the top of every post, even if you're not directly talking about your newsletter. People will still see that under your name and under your headline. So that can also draw a little bit of attention to your newsletter as well.
Yeah, for sure. Do you use the, you know how when you create a post in Substack and then you can share that post
Mhm.
to LinkedIn, Facebook, blah, blah, blah. Do you use that to share to LinkedIn at all, or do you do it custom yourself?
I do it custom myself simply because I want to gear it specifically to that LinkedIn audience. So what the Substack algorithm or what the Substack AI creator does is it kind of creates a generic thing for
Mhm.
your entire audience. And usually it's like a quote or it's the headline or something. But I often want to say something a little more. And I'm not as concerned, especially on LinkedIn, about how it looks or about having a fancy image. Usually the text is fine because that's also what my audience engages with. So I'll create something that's very geared or targeted to my LinkedIn audience. And so it will say, hey, something like for freelancers, have you struggled with this? I've got an article that helps, or, here are some tips I have. You can read more here.
Right.
And I find that makes it a little more engaging for that LinkedIn audience.
Yeah, that's great. And so I guess that comes back to also making sure that your audience is there, like understanding who your audience is and how they engage with the platform. And that is, so would you say, let's say you've been on LinkedIn for a while, you have like 100, not 100,000, but say 3,000 followers and you're a business person, but you're starting a personal Substack on something that you're passionate about. Does it make sense to still use that LinkedIn to kind of share your passion project? Or would you recommend definitely figuring out where your audience for that Substack would be?
Yeah, I would say definitely figure out where your audience for that Substack would be. It can be helpful at first if you've already got a presence on LinkedIn to share some of that because you can test the waters and see if you've got an audience on Substack. And it can also get you used to posting about it in an environment where people are familiar with you and friendly with you. But the other side of that I would say is if it's something that you wouldn't share at work, don't share it on LinkedIn if you're testing out the audience. So if it's a very clear divide, this is very experimental writing you're doing or deeply personal writing you're doing that you wouldn't necessarily want colleagues to know about, I would say don't try testing it on LinkedIn. Go to a different platform and find your audience there. If it's something like me where the two are kind of similar and somewhat related, give it a try on LinkedIn and see what happens because you may have people in your audience who can relate to it, and that will help you shape the tone and the publicizing of your newsletter.
Right. Okay, that's good to know because I think a lot of people that ask me about LinkedIn, it's because they have an audience,
Mhm.
but now they're trying something new on Substack. And so they're like, and I've seen a lot of people hesitate too. They're like, well, now I'm writing about, something new that I'm learning, or maybe this my passion in projects like cooking or something like that, instead of journalism or
Mhm.
whatever. And so it's kind of a big difference. So you definitely would recommend finding out who your audience or where your audience is first.
I would say yes. I would say if it's something like cooking, something that isn't deeply personal and
Right.
internal to you, you could definitely try it on LinkedIn because LinkedIn is starting to move towards embracing more personal style posting. It doesn't have to be entirely 100% professional.
Okay.
But if it's something you're going through a hard time, say, or you're writing more about grief, or you're writing about a struggle you're facing, and you really don't want, it's not something you would be sharing at the workplace at all, even around the water cooler. I would suggest going outside. And one thing that somebody said recently, and I can't remember his name, but it was great advice. He said, too many people are starting to view LinkedIn as a coffee shop instead of as a professional networking site. And the problem is, if your colleagues are seeing it or your potential clients are seeing it, that will shape how they view you. And so if it's something where you really want to be personal, it's very personal to you, and you wouldn't be sharing it at work under any circumstances, really, I would say keep it separate from your LinkedIn. But if it's related somewhat, or if it's like cooking, or you're trying your hand at plant growing, which I am now doing, stuff like that, there's definitely room for that on LinkedIn, and you could start posting about it there and just seeing how it goes.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So what have you tried, or what have you noticed that has seen pretty good results for bringing people over from LinkedIn to Substack? Like what style of posts or content? I guess content is more individualized, but more style.
I would say what LinkedIn audiences are often looking for is solutions to their problems. And so for me, what I have found is the best is helpful content. So something that solves their problems, that helps them feel like they're dealing with things in a different way or in a better way, that answers their questions, and that is helpful to them. That tends to be the stuff that gets the most response. Some things that are personal can be very helpful. And when I say that, I know some people get like really tight and like, I don't want to, do not want to share the inner workings of my soul. You don't have to. I recently did a post about how I realized that I love cheering people on. And that got fantastic response. And that feels very personal, and it is personal, but it's not bearing my soul. It's something that actually is related to work, and that my clients or my audience can relate to as well. So when I say you can get a little bit personal, I don't mean that you have to bare your soul on the LinkedIn page every time you post. Even something about, hey, I'm trying gardening and here's why I love it, is a little bit personal, but doesn't have to expose you or make you feel incredibly vulnerable. And that's the kind of content that I think people are really relating to right now. I think the world feels kind of topsy-turvy and full of upheaval, and people are looking for a human connection. Even on the most professional Substacks, people want to feel like they're connecting with a human being. And so something that you can do that can add your human element, even on something like LinkedIn, will draw an audience. And I think often what happens is people do get a little too into their heads, thinking about everything they have to share. And and what happens honestly and truly is this: people go on, and especially if you're new, you're going to see a lot of people who are the influencers on there, who have hundreds of thousands of followers, who have posts that are getting a bazillion views, and you really and truly don't need that to have it working for you. I think I have around 2,700 followers, and I think around 2,500 connections. So I don't have millions and millions of them, but the people I have are engaged. They want to talk to me, they want to hear from me, and they're interested in what I have to say. And that's going to be so much more helpful for you growing your audience than having a million followers who just aren't really engaging with your work and are just following you because. And I think that takes pressure off. You don't need posts to go viral. There's no formula for figuring out what will make a post go viral. You could post something on a Monday at 12 and it goes nowhere, but if it had been posted on Sunday or Wednesday, it takes off, even if it's the exact same thing. I don't know a way to say, if you post this, it will definitely go places.
Right.
What I would say is just experiment with your tone and embrace that the majority of your audience won't really engage with your work, but it will mean something to them. And when they're ready, they will go over and they will subscribe. And especially if you're starting out, it will feel slow at first, but it will build up if you keep at it, if you keep sharing your message, and if you interact with other people and share helpful information.
Yeah, that's really good. Like it seems similar to Substack that way, that it's more of a slow growth and people aren't necessarily doing the whole like and comment like you would get maybe on Instagram. But it's not that they're not reading it. What do you think about so I've noticed just being on LinkedIn the short time that I have is I get a lot of the like message posts and things, which I'm guessing are paid ads that people are sending out. Do you think that growing, like if someone was really focused on growing subscribers, what do you think about that sort of approach? Is that something that you've seen work, or do you think that's kind of like it might work in the short term, but it's not going to be sustainable necessarily? You're just going to end up annoying people.
I do think you're going to end up annoying people. I think because people want to feel more of a human connection. What I do, which I have found helpful, is if someone connects with me and they ask me a question that is related to my newsletter. So, and I've done this before, a freelancer might write to me and say, hey, here's something I'm struggling with. I'll give them an answer because I want to be helpful. That's first and foremost what I want to do. And then I might say, if you're more interested or if you want to read more about this, or if you'd like more support, I have a newsletter. Here's where I talk about these things. And I'll give them a link either to the newsletter or to a specific article that I've written that can help guide them through it. So I think what happens is when people do those paid ads, especially for something like a Substack, it's obvious that the focus isn't as much on being helpful. It's just about building the audience. And I think that does cause people to sort of draw back. Whereas if you engage in a conversation with someone, even just a couple of back and forths, and then at the end you just say, by the way, I write about this regularly. Here's where you can read more. I think they're more likely because at that point they trust you. You've been helpful to them. You've shown them that you have information that can be relevant to them. They're more likely to engage and actually be a reader who reads. Because I think the other thing people don't think about is your subscriber numbers can go up, but if they're not reading your newsletter, it's not really helping you. And especially if they're just a free subscriber who isn't paying for anything, they're not helping you just by being a subscriber who doesn't read things. So what's
Yeah.
helpful to you is having a subscriber who reads and who ultimately wants to pay for your newsletter if that's what your aim is. And so I think if you connect with people before you start pushing your newsletter, you start to build that trust and they're more likely to subscribe, read your content, and then ultimately go on to pay you for it.
Right. Yeah, that's really good advice because I think sometimes we kind of get caught up in the numbers game, so to speak, where we're always comparing ourselves with, some big newsletter that has 100,000 subscribers, and here we are with only 1,000 and or only 500 or something. But if we can focus on keeping that we want an engaged audience, or someone that actually cares about what we're writing and not just another number, that can help. And that's a really good process that you just put out there too.
Exactly. I don't lead with the newsletter. I don't say, hey, thanks for connecting, read my newsletter. I'll wait, I'll engage a little bit with them. And if it seems like they're asking questions or they're interested, I'll send them a link. But the other thing is once they're connected with you, they're going to start seeing your posts where you're posting about your newsletter as well. And so that can draw them into. And so that, like we said, it takes a little bit of time. So if you're hoping to go from zero to, I don't know, $10,000 a month on LinkedIn, from LinkedIn subscribers, it's probably not going to happen unless you've already got a massive following. But if you're willing to take the time to nurture those relationships, get to know people, and let people get to know you, in the long run, it's going to be so much better, I think, for your newsletter.
Yeah, that's great. What are your thoughts on frequency? And I know you've touched on this on your workshops before, but if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about like how much time do we need to spend on LinkedIn to nurture these relationships and get ourselves out there?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think what I would say is you don't want it to be unsustainable. And what often happens is people go all in for like a week or two where they're like fully focused on LinkedIn and then it doesn't go anywhere. And so then they're just like, I don't want to do it anymore. So I would say you're better off if you're just starting out or if you're kind of rebuilding yourself in there. I recommend at least once a weekday. So Monday to Friday, at least once a day to post so that you can, because the thing is you want to build up a familiarity with your audience. You don't want it to be a case if you post and people say, oh yeah, I forgot they existed. You want them to kind of be looking forward to your posts. And I think you need once a day at least to do that. I don't think any more than twice a day, unless you've really got a lot to say or there's a lot going on in the world where you can add to the conversation. But I would say between once and twice a day, focused on something that's helpful. And then I would say once you've posted, not before you've posted, once you've posted, then scroll through and look for posts where you can add a thought, where you can share some helpful advice, where you can share something interesting you've learned. And the reason I say do that after you've posted is if you scroll first, you are going to start to think that every topic has been discussed ad nauseum. You don't have anything to add to the conversation. Everybody else has a million followers, so why would you say something? So to get out of your own head, and this is what I do, I post first. Then I scroll after my posting is done. That makes it a little easier to sort of not feel self-conscious about it, get it done. And then you can just focus on sharing your thoughts on other people's posts. If there are groups related to your audience, join those and answer questions.
Right.
And don't go in just advertising your newsletter immediately. Start off by being helpful. And then where it makes sense, maybe plug your newsletter if you're allowed. Not all LinkedIn groups allow self-marketing. Some do, some don't. So be clear that you understand the rules of the group. But if they allow it, once you've been in there and gotten to know people, then start talking about your newsletter.
Yeah. It seems really similar to the advice that I give on using Substack notes. It is like, start out with once a day and, make sure it's sustainable and all of that. But I would say one difference that I've noticed, which I think is really great, is that you can schedule those posts to go out, which you can't do with notes.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And the other thing is, it is good to go on LinkedIn too, because engaging with other people's content is really helpful. And that does actually get you open to a wider audience, because when you post on somebody else's post or when you comment on somebody else's post, now you're being exposed to their audience as well. So that does broaden your reach beyond beyond who you're reaching just in your own network. The other thing that I do is often when I post about my Substack, people will respond who aren't actually in my network. They might be second connections or third connections. And I will usually send them a connection request and say, thank you for commenting on my post. Because they're starting to build a relationship with you anyhow, and it's a two-way street, right? It's nice for them to grow out their connection. I don't think I've ever had anyone say no. If I do, I can't remember it. If they've taken the time to comment on something you've posted, especially if it's a positive one, if they're a troll or if they're, insulting you or something or being argumentative, definitely don't worry about it. But if they've added something thoughtful to the conversation, then I would say reach out, send a connection request, and get to know them and nurture that relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good idea. I still have so much to learn about LinkedIn. I think I purchased one of your guides recently and I need to start going through it and actually doing the work. But this is why I was saying, I don't know which questions to ask, but yeah, it's all good. So I guess for me, I'm kind of wondering, so you've been doing Substack and LinkedIn for about how long-ish?
I've been doing them both. They've overlapped for 2 years. I've honestly been on LinkedIn since 2010, but I only started really using it around 2020. I did start posting on Substack in May of 2023, but I wouldn't say I really focused on it as a way of promoting my newsletter until maybe the last year. So I would say probably the last 8 or 9 months. It wasn't something I did with any regularity before that or with any sort of strategy. I would just publish an article, and then I would post about it on my LinkedIn, but never follow up with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say maybe like the last 8 or 9 months, I've been doing both and using LinkedIn to actually drive my Substack.
Yeah. And you're seeing about a third of your subscribers or so come from there.
I would say so, yeah.
Okay. And that's is that the only social media platform that you use for that?
Yeah, with any regularity. I did start off on LinkedIn, not LinkedIn, sorry. I did start off on Instagram, but Instagram is just not, I think you need too much design, too much of an eye for pretty things, and it's not really my thing. So I am very inconsistent with how I use it. I feel like LinkedIn is more where my audience is, and so that's the one I focus on.
Yeah, that's cool. So if someone wants to learn more, how can they get in touch with you, or how can they maybe learn more about LinkedIn from you? Because your workshops are really great.
Oh, I'm glad. Thank you. So my newsletter is Happy Freelancing, and that's on Substack. So it's happyfreelancing.substack.com. And I have a link on there to my LinkedIn resources, but you can also see them at heiditurner.gumroad.com. And I can share those with you as well so that you can, if there's a write-up or something, you can link to them. And that's where I have resources on using LinkedIn, on getting more comfortable with LinkedIn, even if it feels uncomfortable, and about finding your audience without having to go viral or have a bazillion followers, but building up a system that works for you and having lots of ideas for posts. So you're never just staring at a blank screen.
Right. Yeah, that's great. And anything else that you would want to share that I didn't think of or that's come up while we were talking?
One thing that I talk a lot about with people is that they approach they approach social media and LinkedIn like they have to be the most innovative person out there, and you don't. Most of what's getting posted on there is not revolutionary. It is not changing the world. Almost everyone has something to say that somebody else can learn from. There is somebody out there who hasn't heard what you have to say, and they need to hear it. And so post for that person. Don't post worrying about all the people who won't pay attention to it or who don't need to hear it. Post for the person who could learn and who could benefit from what you have to say. And that will help you to find your audience. That will also help you to feel a lot more comfortable. And we all have knowledge that we can share that somebody needs to hear. And so just keep that in mind if you start to feel a little nervous or self-conscious about posting.
Yeah. Yeah, awesome. It reminds me of this phrase I heard some years ago, and I think I wrote a Substack article on it, but outdated by now, I'm sure. But the phrase was, "We are all teachers and we are all students." And
Yes.
I really like that one. Just kind of, it was probably from my kid's sensei, actually. Kind of takes that approach, right? We're further on the path than someone else, and we can help them, and someone else is helping us. So it's a really
Exactly.
great
And
approach.
something that feels obvious to us is not obvious to somebody else out there. And if there's one person it's not obvious to, there are a lot of people it's not obvious to. So don't be afraid to write for them and to try to reach out to them.
Yeah, that's great advice. Well, thank you so much for joining me today and talking about LinkedIn, filling in my gap for me on my knowledge. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. This has been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Substack Coach. That was a really great interview with Heidi, and I'm so thankful that she shared so many great insights, tips, and practical things that we can do with LinkedIn. I am going to go and find how to put that link underneath my name for all my posts so that it links out to my Substack. I think I have to decide what I want to link out to, but I did not know that existed, so I'm going to go find that. And it was just great to sit down with Heidi and have someone else answer all the questions that I have been getting over the past few months or so. And I hope you enjoyed the interview as well. And good luck with your Substack. If you have any more questions, feel free to send them to me and I will try to get them answered for you. We'll talk to you soon.